So today I listened to the Joe Rogan podcast with Dr. Robert Malone, and I found it very interesting. I thought it was really cool. It's not on YouTube or anything like that, and I thought for my own sake I would do a sort of TLDR. It's over 3 hours long and took me all day to listen to while I was at work and after hanging out with my girlfriend after work. Um, the TLDR is pretty simple to break down, and it basically comes down to this: Dr. Robert Malone is interested in getting the idea across that regulation in government leads to monopoly. Monopoly leads to less than efficient exchange of medicine. Less than efficient exchange of medicine leads to lockdown and COVID restrictions. Now I'm going to break that down a little bit because that was an extremely basic TLDR. Um, Regulation in government would be the FDA. The FDA has certain regulations when it comes to how trials are done, and basically what happens is the FDA requires trials and tests to be done on drugs, and that makes it so that it takes a lot of money and lobbying and a lot of research and data to go through those trials, and it takes a long time unless there's a crazy emergency. And if there's a crazy emergency, then everything changes, like how we've seen in the current, COVID uh, emergency. A lot of the stuff that's happened is a lot of money influx, a lot of money coming from and into Pfizer was his favorite company to rag on. Also, full disclosure, at the end of the Joe Rogan podcast, it sounded like Dr. Malone was pretty conservative. So if you're not conservative, I'd say take everything he says with a grain or two of salt. Um, but generally speaking, most everything he said seemed to be factually accurate to me. But um, uh, when you have this unique situation that we've had, back to the monopoly side, you have a giant influx of money, and the money is coming from investors into the big pharma companies. Now, these big pharma companies then, being singularly motivated by one thing, and that is generating money, go and apply their money where they think it would be most fit. And as Dr. Malone points out, speaking about Pfizer, Pfizer is the most criminal, has the most criminal history of any pharmaceutical company that produces drugs. That's his claim. I haven't looked it up, but I do know that Pfizer has some serious criminal charges in its history and settlements that it's had to go through. And it all comes down to a numbers calculation. Is it worth fudging numbers or doing illegal activity to make extra money? And if it is, then do it. If it isn't, then don't. And so he claims that these big pharma companies don't have any morals. They're only singularly motivated by money. That being said, they may then use some of their money to press on government regulation and say, hey, maybe regulate us a little harder than you would normally, but also make it faster. And so what happens is if the government starts regulating things harder, then less companies can pass regulation. And so you can only have big companies coming in for passing regulation. But then when you have big companies coming in, you have like the big five, big four. I don't know how many big big pharma companies there are, but I think there's like 5 or 4. Those guys come in, Moderna, J&J, and Pfizer. They come in and they say, okay, well, let's make some money because we're the big guys. We're the only people that are competitive here. Let's make some serious money. So instead of making something generic, they make something unique and new. And that would be a vaccine, for example. New technology, mRNA. It's the first time mRNA has been used in a vaccine, to my understanding. Don't quote me on that. I actually didn't look that up before saying it. But so you have this new technology, cutting edge, super expensive, and the U.S. government then proceeds to buy 500 million of these of these vaccines. I think they ended up buying 1 billion of them because they bought another 500 million, which absolutely ludicrous in my mind, but whatever. So you get 1 billion doses from the U.S. government alone, and then you sell to all the Europeans, and then every other rich country that can afford it. And so going for a new drug, a new medical procedure is a lot more lucrative because you can charge a lot more for it because it's new and it's still patented. And that's why they put weight on the FDA. They obviously there's no paper trail there, but it would make sense in any intellectual mind to say they would be interested in motivating stricter guidance for this vaccine so that less people can get involved with it. And if you didn't have a strict FDA process, then you might find trials that work with something like Moderna or hydroxychloroquine, or not Moderna, but hydroxychloroquine and the horse drug that Joe Rogan took. I can't remember its name off the top of my head, but those are generic, and you can get them for like a penny a dose in bulk, which is, there's no money to be made there. But if you can get a new expensive drug and get 1 billion purchases just from the United States there, you're going to be making a obscene amount of money, like tens of billions, just from this one drug. And then you have all your other drug production going on too, which has always led to a multi-billion-dollar industry. So you then become like more than triple your value, basically is what it seems to me in like a year. So it's clear financial motivation. So that's the start of the TLDR. Obviously that leads, well, I guess that is the TLDR in a nutshell. But because in the resolution to this TLDR is because of this regulation and these big companies fighting for these vaccine slots instead of generic preemptive medication, you then have the lockdowns. And the lockdowns are a result of us needing to develop a new technology instead of testing current generic technologies that we have and drugs that we have. And that's the TLDR. There's other details in there too. Like, he initially comes off pretty friendly towards Dr. Fauci, but then he also talks about how Dr. Fauci basically ruined this dude's career when he had questions about how poorly Dr. Fauci was handling the AIDS issue in the 80s. And if you look it up, like, he has a terrible history with AIDS. It was kind of atrocious. Other stuff that comes in is how our discourse is limited by the companies that own Pfizer. Namely, I think BlackRock owns Pfizer, but I'm pretty sure the company that owns Pfizer owns the fact checkers for Twitter. So let me say that in another way. Twitter, the company that represents the largest information exchange, is being fact checked by people who are financially owned, literally, by the people that also own a drug company. So if you have any concerns about this drug company, there is a direct financial interest in eliminating any information that makes that drug company look bad. And I think that's why Dr. Robert Malone claims he was, well, I wouldn't even say alleges, but maybe infers that he was taken off Twitter. So that I thought that was interesting. There's a lot of other great stuff in this, but basically, my takeaway is that, uh, and this is my own takeaway. This isn't something that Dr. Malone was promoting, but my takeaway is that um, my last YouTube episode I did was about censorship and how it's inherently anti-science, and any system or organization that can be internally destroyed by a truth has to be inherently false. Because falsehood can't destroy truth because it's false. You can look at them, you can compare them, and you can say this is good and this is bad. And inversely, any organization or idea that is founded on truth cannot be destroyed by falsehood because they're, generally speaking, they're objective. Now, you may say, oh, there's no such thing as truth, but I dare you to put your face up, look at the sun. Well, don't look at it, but let the sunlight touch your face, and then say that there is no sun. Because if you say that there is no sun, then you're not even worth talking to. But if you can say that there is a sun, and that there is an earth, and that you are alive, then you are a human, and we can talk and we can have discussions about truth and falsehood. But yeah, that's my quick breakdown of this episode of Joe Rogan. It's still on Spotify as of 15 minutes ago. Uh, the 4th at 10 p.m. Mountain Time. But yeah, thanks for letting me have this fun explanation of the video from my takeaways and stuff. I hope you take some time and watch it. There's also a bunch of stuff about Dr. Malone claiming that the U.S. is like Nazi Germany. This hypnotized thing was interesting to listen to, but this Nazi Germany comparison, not even close to accurate. Everybody's trying to shut him down because, follow the money and all that. But when is it appropriate to question pre-Nazi Germany and Nazi Germany and what happened there? Like, when is that appropriate? Because we have censorship on the internet. We can't say certain things, and what we can say is determined by the government. The CDC says something, that's now law. And if you say something different, you're removed from every platform. So I'm not comparing us to Nazi Germany or pre-Nazi Germany, but I'm just wondering, when can we ask questions? Is it okay to ask a question about asking questions? But when will it be okay to ask a question? When is it okay to be like, well, this is kind of what the Nazis were doing? I'm not saying that's what we are doing. I'm just saying, when is it okay to ask that question? Do we have to be doing what the Nazis did to do that? Because we're not doing what the Nazis did. But I don't know. Thanks for listening.